of productive but essentially coercive efforts in my hands, or in the creating of the intellectual climate in which such veiled control would be tolerated in the future. I destroy or paralyze productive efforts that cannot be ensnarled in my web. After a break, Professor A will take the floor in order to put finance capitalism into full biological perspective. His short talk will be followed by similar abbreviated summaries by his 6 associates, all of whom you know well. The rest of the weekend will be devoted to forthright fielding of your questions. Okay, now I want you to stop the video right here and just rewind back to the beginning. Well, not to the beginning, but just a few sentences ago, right before you heard the word slaves can be productive. And just run that by yourselves a few times. I'm not going to go back over it. Just stop the vid, go back, and about the slaves, because that's you. That's everybody else on the planet.
This is where your birth certificate comes in?
Yes, the birth certificate.
www.strawmanburneth.com.
This is all time. Just I'll say no more. Okay, we've got Professor A. Professor A, he's teaching Son on the role of fraud in nature. Quoting again, are we not all predatory animals by instinct? If humans ceased wholly from preying upon each other, could they continue to exist? It's a big question, posed by none other than Anton S. LaVey, another Satanist. Didn't he co-write the Satanist Bible along with Aleister Crowley? Anyway. Oh, here's a name we've all heard if you've been studying Brian's vids. Nature, to be commanded, must be obeyed. That was Sir Francis Bacon. He was the head Freemason at the time who gathered together all those other Freemason scholars as they did their work putting together the King James Bible that was authorised in 1611.
What? A Satanist put together the King James Bible? Come on.
Well, hasn't your voice of reason been telling the world that now for the longest time?
Well, I'm going to ask Ben Blake, that one.
Organisms typically base their success primarily on deception and rely on actual force or mutually advantageous trade, symbiosis, as little as possible. Okay, I'm going to, for myself, run that by me again. Organisms typically base their success primarily on deception and rely on actual force or mutually advantageous trade as little as possible. Mutually advantageous. Oh, right, okay. This should be nearly self-evident, but is generally overlooked due to the moral codes we elitists foist on our subjects. Let me give a few examples in case the moral culture has to some extent impaired your powers of objective observation. Camouflage is universal among predators and victims alike. Blossoms imitate fragrances and colours which are sexually attractive to certain insects in order to effect pollination. Dogs bark ferociously and feign attack on enemies of whom they are in fact terrified. The Venus flytrap plant lures flies to their deaths. Men proclaim their altruism to others and even themselves while they selfishly scramble for personal advantage. If you doubt that fraud is normal in nature, you should read section 3 of the first chapter of Robert Ardrey's The Social Contract for a wealth of fascinating examples. Then in brackets he says, of course Ardrey fails to grasp the full application to contemporary human society of his brilliant insights into man's animal nature. Human mental prowess and communicative powers have merely provided superb elaboration on nature's old theme of fraud and added its own distinctive feature, self-delusion. Primitive animal hierarchies are based on bluff and bluster, and each member is well aware of and accepts, at least temporarily, its position in the hierarchy. The same wild enthusiasm and fascination for dominance and submission rages in human hearts. However, fraud is taken one step further. Not only is fraud, bluff and bluster used to achieve dominance, but fraudulent altruism and collective institutions are used to conceal dominance once achieved. Human hierarchies, in contrast to the animal variety, are best sustained when the members are deluded regarding the oppressive nature, or better, even the very existence of the hierarchy. To all of you out there who have been labelled a conspiracy theorist with contempt by those who have their heads in the sand, it's all true. That's what that was all about. Stop the beat and go back and listen to those words again. Visible rulers are highly vulnerable. Thus we see visible rulers claiming to be representatives of God, the common good, the material forces of history, the general will, either through vote or intuition, tradition or other intellectual spooks that serve to lessen the envy of the ruled for the rulers. Encouraging such self-delusions among the masses of the ruled is universal for visible governments. However, such spooks are little protection for the leaders of such systems against their sophisticated elite rivals, and no protection against men like your father. They're so proud of him. The Roman Empire was unquestioned by the mass of its subjects for centuries, but the emperors lived in constant fear of coup and assassination. There's your answer. By embracing deception wholeheartedly at every level, finance capitalism, or rule through money, has fashioned the ultimate system yet devised for the secure exercise of power. Men like your father, the hidden masters of finance capitalism, govern those who govern, produce and think through invisible financial tentacles, the operations of which will be elucidated later by my colleagues. Dominance in all aspects of society is surreptitiously accomplished while the great majority of the ruled and even most of the visible leaders believe themselves to be fairly autonomous, if harried, members of a pluralistic society. Nearly everyone believes major decisions to be the vector sum of autonomous pressures exerted by business, labour, government, consumers, social classes and other special interests. In fact, the vectors of societal power are carefully balanced by us, so that any net movement is in a direction chosen by us. The only fly in the ointment is the occasional but extremely messy interferences by competing financial dynasties. This disconcerting problem will not be a major topic for this weekend. I now yield to Professor Q